You already know this feeling. You bought something. Maybe it was sneakers. Maybe it was a watch. Maybe it was a bag you'd been eyeing for 3 months and finally convinced yourself you deserved. You posted it. You waited. You checked your phone after 15 minutes, then 30, and then you realized something the entire marketing industry has built itself to prevent you from noticing. Nobody cared.
And that moment, that specific, slightly deflating moment, is where this video actually begins. Because there's a version of your life you've never tried living. The one where you stop buying things for other people. And no, this isn't a lecture about budgeting or cutting lattes. This is about what happens to your money, your time, and your actual identity when you step out of a game you don't even remember signing up for.
In 1899, an American economist named Thorstein Veblen published a book called The Theory of the Leisure Class. In it, he described something he observed about Victorian-era wealthy people. They weren't just buying things to use them. They were buying things to be seen buying them. He called it conspicuous consumption. The logic was simple. Wealth only counts if other people can witness it. That was 125 years ago.
We are still doing the exact same thing. We've just swapped the velvet coats and gilded carriages for Instagram captions and unboxing videos. The costume changed? The mechanism didn't. Veblen originally described this as a habit of the upper class. The uncomfortable update is that by 2025, it had trickled all the way down, through the middle class, the working class, and deep into people who are already carrying credit card debt they can't pay off. A LendingTree survey found that 39% of Americans admit to spending more than they could afford specifically to impress someone else. Among Gen Z, that number is 52%. Among millennials, 46%. Nearly 1 in 2 young Americans is spending money they don't have to buy approval from people they'll probably never see again. That's not a spending problem. That's an identity problem wearing a spending problem's clothes.
Let me introduce you to Derek. Derek is 32. He works at a fintech startup in Austin, pulling in $80,000 a year, which puts him in the top 20% of earners his age. He drives a BMW X5 on a $700 a month lease, wears an Apple Watch Ultra, lives in a downtown apartment with a view that costs him $2,800 a month. He photographs his meals before he eats them. His wardrobe is curated. His logo to fabric ratio was aggressively high. Derek's net worth? Negative $40,000. Derek's Instagram? Extremely convincing. Here's the thing about Derek. He's not stupid. Derek actually reads finance content. Derek knows what an index fund is. He's had the "I should really start investing" conversation with himself approximately 47 times. But every single time he has money left over, before he can open his brokerage app, there's a question that shows up like an uninvited roommate. What will people think if I don't have this? And that question, not the stock market, not inflation, not the economy, is the actual reason Derek is $40,000 underwater. That question costs more than any interest rate the Fed has ever set. Here's the actual mechanism. You buy something to impress someone. You get a brief hit of validation. You need the next one. Your baseline expectations rise. You have to spend more to feel the same thing. Neuroscientists call this hedonic adaptation. You can call it a treadmill with no off switch. Every upgrade becomes the new minimum. Not an achievement, just a new starting line. Think about how this plays out in practice. Derek gets the BMW. For about 3 weeks, he notices it every time he walks to the parking lot. By month 2, it's just his car. The $700 monthly payment, however, is still very much present and accounted for. He's adapted to the pleasure, but not the cost. So when his coworker shows up with a newer model, one with the bigger screen and the ambient lighting package, the whole thing starts over. He's not chasing the car anymore. He's chasing the feeling the car gave him that one time, briefly, in the first 3 weeks.
That's the trap. And the loop doesn't care what you make. It just scales up with your paycheck like it's on commission. While you're running that loop, your money is quietly leaving and not coming back.
Now, here's the part most finance videos won't tell you. While you're performing wealth online, the people who've actually built it have already quietly exited this game. And I'm not talking about TikTok rich. I'm talking about people with real, documented net worth. The kind that shows up in an account balance, not a feed. Research on the behavior of the top 1% shows a trend that's genuinely strange if you've been told that luxury is the destination. They're walking away from material status symbols, not because they can't afford them, but because for people who've actually made it, the most expensive thing you can flex isn't a Hermes bag or a Bentley. It's time. It's privacy. It's the ability to turn your phone off on a Tuesday without asking anyone's permission. Brands like Dior, Versace, and Burberry have seen real revenue pressure partly because of this shift. When every logo has a convincing dupe on Amazon, the ultra-wealthy don't use designer goods to separate themselves anymore.
They separate themselves with things you can't photograph. Morgan Housel, who wrote The Psychology of Money, put it this way: spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. And then he wrote something I think is even sharper. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. That's not a budgeting tip. That's a complete restructuring of why you want things in the first place. I know what some of you are thinking right now. But appearances matter. Dressing well, driving something decent, that's investing in yourself. In business, in networking, image is everything. And that's not entirely wrong. There's a real difference between deliberately investing in your professional image for a specific, strategic reason and performing constantly for an invisible audience that isn't actually watching. A good suit for a funding pitch? Strategy. A Rolex you bought because you were afraid your coworkers think you haven't made it yet? That's a different thing entirely. That's paying a subscription fee to an anxiety that will never send you a receipt. The distinction is the question you ask before you buy. Does this serve a purpose I actually have? Or does this change what someone thinks of me? Two questions. Two completely different financial lives. Let's talk numbers, because the math here is almost annoying in how simple it is. The average American spends over $18,000 a year on non-essential goods. Not rent, not groceries, not the electric bill. Just stuff. The kind of stuff that feels reasonable one purchase at a time and catastrophic when you see the annual total. That's a year of rent in a lot of cities. That's also exactly the gap between Derek's net worth and the net worth of someone making the same salary who just isn't playing the impression game. Take half that, $9,000 a year, and put it into a broad index fund at the historical average return of roughly 7% after inflation. In 20 years, you have around $400,000. That's not quit your job and move to a yacht money. That's not even succession money. But it is the difference between needing to work and choosing to work. That distinction sounds small until the day you actually need it, and then it's the only thing that matters. But here's the twist nobody mentions. The $400,000 isn't even the most valuable thing you get when you stop buying for an audience. The most valuable thing is that you stop performing. And once you stop performing, something strange happens. The anxiety that was driving all those purchases, the low-grade background noise of, am I enough? Do I look successful? What do they think? Starts to go quiet. Not immediately, but gradually, because you're no longer feeding it. When you stop buying for other people, you start buying for yourself. And when you start buying for yourself, you realize you actually want a lot less. Not because you've become some kind of ascetic, not because you've found enlightenment at a Costco, but because it turns out most of what you thought you wanted wasn't really what you wanted. It was the version of you that you thought other people wanted to see. Those are two different people with two very different shopping carts. One of them is broke and well documented online.
The other one is quietly building something that doesn't need a caption. Here's what I want you to take out of this video. The impression game has no designed finish line. There's no car expensive enough to make the judgment stop, because the people you're performing for aren't watching you. They're too busy wondering what everyone else is thinking about them. Everyone is performing for an audience that doesn't exist. Veblen described this in 1899. Housel described it in 2020. Nothing has changed because what's actually being sold to you isn't the product. It's the feeling that you're getting close to a version of yourself that other people will finally recognize and approve of. That feeling never arrives, but the credit card statement does. Every single month, right on time. The question isn't what you can afford. The question is who you're buying it for. If the honest answer isn't yourself, then you're paying admission to a show where the audience went home a long time ago. If this made you think twice about something you were about to buy, drop it in the comments. And subscribe if you want to keep looking at the things the financial system would rather you didn't think too hard about.